Yesterday on February 2, 2026, the global financial markets witnessed a historic correction. Nvidia, one of the most valuable companies on Earth, lost $600 billion in market capitalization in a single session. To put this mathematical figure into perspective, that loss is larger than the entire GDP of nations like Sweden or Thailand. But we are not here to talk about stock prices or the panic of Wall Street traders. We are here to analyze the causal mechanism behind this event because it fundamentally changes your relationship with technology. The trigger was the release of DeepSeek V4, an artificial intelligence model from China that shattered the prevailing narrative of the last 3 years. For years, we were told a specific key equation regarding the future of intelligence. We were told that performance equals compute power multiplied by capital, meaning, if you wanted the smartest AI, you needed the most expensive chips, specifically the Nvidia H100 and H200 series. And you needed billions of dollars to build massive energy-hungry data centers to run them. Yesterday, DeepSeek V4 proved that equation is mathematically false. They released a model that matches the performance of GPT-5, but they did it using a fraction of the computing power. Let's look at the data because the numbers tell a story that the headlines are missing. Standard Western models rely on what is called dense architecture, or every parameter is active for every calculation. This is a brute force method. It is like turning on every light in a skyscraper just to find your keys in one room. DeepSeek V4 utilizes a highly optimized mixture of experts' architecture combined with extreme quantization techniques. This means that for any given query, only a small percentage of the neural network is actually activated. The result is an efficiency jump that defies the laws of Moore's law. Reports indicate that DeepSeek trained this model for approximately $6 million. Compare that to the estimated $100 million required to train comparable models in Silicon Valley. That is a cost reduction factor of nearly 95%. This brings us to the geopolitical dimension, which is based on supply chain logic. The United States implemented strict export controls banning the sale of high-end chips to China. The strategic goal was to cap China's capabilities by starving them of hardware. However, the data now shows that this restriction acted as an evolutionary pressure. Deny access to brute force hardware. Chinese engineers were forced to innovate on the software and algorithmic level. They optimized their code to run on older consumer-grade chips like the RTX 4090 or even older server clusters. This is the hidden logic of innovation. Constraints often drive efficiency better than abundance does. So why did the market crash? Because the entire valuation of the AI sector was built on the assumption of hardware scarcity. Investors believed that demand for H100 chips would be infinite because everyone needed them to compete. DeepSeek just demonstrated that you do not need the fastest Ferrari to win the race if you know a shortcut. If intelligence becomes cheap to produce because of efficient code, then the value of the hardware monopoly collapses. But enough about the macroeconomics. What does this mean for you, the individual watching this video? We are entering a new phase of the digital era, which I call the post-hardware phase. Until yesterday, you were a passive consumer dependent on giant corporations to rent you intelligence via subscription. You paid $20 a month to OpenAI or Google because you couldn't run these massive models on your own computer. That barrier is now dissolving. DeepSeek V4 and the open source models that will follow are efficient enough to run on local hardware. This brings me to the solution section of this analysis. In times of systemic disruption, you must pivot your strategy to ensure your own sovereignty. Here are 3 data-driven strategies you need to implement starting today. Strategy number 1 is local sovereignty. Stop relying exclusively on cloud-based AI models that harvest your data and can be censored at any moment. The efficiency breakthrough of DeepSeek means you can now run high-level intelligence on your own laptop or a small home server. Invest in a machine with a decent amount of RAM, not a supercomputer, but a solid workstation. Download the weights of open efficient models like DeepSeek Ollama or Mistral. Learn to use tools like Ollama or LM Studio. When you run AI locally, no one sees your prompts, no one tracks your data, and no one can turn it off. You become independent of the cloud infrastructure that monitors the world. Strategy number 2 is skill optimization over brute force. For the last few years, the tech industry rewarded those who could manage massive budgets and massive clusters. Now the value shifts to those who can write efficient, optimized code. If you are a developer or a student, do not focus on how to use more resources, focus on how to use less. Study algorithms, study memory management, and study the architecture of sparse neural networks. The future belongs to the lean, the era of lazy software development where we just threw more RAM at the problem is over. Strategy number 3 is information diversification. The release of DeepSeek V4 was a shock to the West because the Western information ecosystem created a bubble. We were told that China was decades behind, that their tech was inferior, and that sanctions were working perfectly. The data proved otherwise. You must diversify your sources of information. Do not rely solely on mainstream Western financial news, which often acts as a PR agency for large corporations. Read technical papers from ArcSiv. Look at the benchmarks on Hugging Face. Follow independent analysts who look at the code, not the stock price. When you look at the raw data, the narrative collapses. The math told us this was coming, but the arrogance of the monopoly blinded the establishment. Let's analyze the energy component of this shift because it is critical for your long-term planning. The brute force models of Silicon Valley are causing an energy crisis, consuming terawatt-hours of electricity. This centralization creates a vulnerability. If the grid fails or regulations tighten, the intelligence goes offline. Efficient models like DeepSeek represent a decentralized, energy-friendly future. It aligns with the philosophy of resilience. If you can run your intelligence on a solar-powered local server, you are survival ready. If you depend on a massive data center in Virginia, you are vulnerable. So what is the conclusion of this analysis? The events of February 2nd were not a disaster, they were a correction. The illusion that money can buy intelligence has been broken. The illusion that hardware sanctions can stop ideas has been shattered. We are moving from an era of artificial monopoly to an era of artificial abundance. Do not fear the crash of the giants. When the dinosaurs fall, it creates space for the mammals to rise. You are the mammal in this equation. You have the agility, you now have the access to efficient tools, and you have the opportunity to build independence. Do not let this crisis go to waste. While Wall Street panics over their lost billions, you should be downloading the code and building your future. The monopoly is dead. The code is free. It is up to you to decide what to do with it. Stay analytical, stay sovereign, and trust the data, not the narrative. Subscribe to the channel for more unbiased analysis of the systems that shape our world. We will see you in the data.